Tax planners. These 5 keys have generated millions of dollars in new tax planning business for my clients. And if you give me just a few minutes, I'm gonna break all of these down, your niche, offer, your leverage sales process, traffic, and money math, so that you can implement it and install it into your firm and start landing clients on demand. This is the exact framework Ben Golden used to sign 39 new clients. Ed Lloyd used it to get $100,000 in new engagements in 30 days. Peter Holtz is using it to go from $10 million a year to $40 million so he can hit the top 100 accounting firms and more. Some of who are under NDA and I can't disclose their names because of how big they are. However, with that being said, my name is Daniel Schulte. I've been dubbed the king of tax planning marketing. And in the next 20-ish minutes, we're gonna cover the 5 keys that you need to have in place and in order to land new tax planning clients. Now, if you're watching this, you probably fall under one of 2 categories. The first one is that you're running advertising. You're trying to get new clients and grow your firm. You're either an accountant, a financial planner, or you're on some type of investment like oil and gas fund, and you're looking to get more tax planning clients. The second type of person who might be watching this right now is you're looking to get into tax planning. If you're looking to get into tax planning, I'm not your guy. Go check out Certified Tax Coach. I help tax planners acquire affluent clients with automated sales presentations. I ran my first paid ad back in 2015, about 10 years ago, and in 2018, I started my own advertising agency. Now, at the time, I had absolutely no money starting out, so I was hammering the phones, cold emailing basically anybody that I could get a hold of, if I could get their email. And while it worked great, it was cheap, it was inexpensive, it was absolutely draining. I was making 100 dials per day. I would maybe get 1 or 2 appointments, right? I knew that I did not make money when I picked up the phone and dialed. I made money when I closed the deal. So I needed to figure out a way to get the most appointments on my calendar as possible. This is when I started running paid ads. If you've ever heard of Alex Hormozy, he wrote a book called $100 Million Offers. And so I took what I learned in that book and I started running offers, and it worked. I was getting people on my calendar 4, 5 appointments per day, and it worked for a time. It worked great. However, more and more people started to use the exact same formula, and instead of people hopping on and saying, yeah, let's go, I started hearing things like, who are you again? Or what do you do? Or, hey kid, I have 5 other appointments this week with people just like you. Just tell me how what your price is, and I'll let you know if I want to do business. And every day I woke up, I literally would have preferred to put a toothpick under my toenail and kick a wall as opposed to hopping on the calls. And one day I actually go into the allergy office because I have horrible allergies and I'm getting tested. And the doctor walks into the room and he says, hey, here's this tablet. Watch a 20-minute video and then I'm going to come back in after it's all done. We'll see if you have any questions. So I said, interesting. The doctor only gets paid based on how many patients come in. I wonder how many more patients per day he's turning out. Just like he said, 20 minutes passes by, he comes back in. I'd watch the video. He said, hey, do you have any questions? I said, no, I don't. He said, okay, cool. We'll get you scheduled for your next appointment. I said, that's it? He said, yeah, that's it. Now, around the same time, I came across a study done by Google. It was called the 7-11-4 study. And what it said is that before somebody's ready to buy, they need to spend about 7 hours of their time with you. They need to hear from you 11 different times, okay? So those 7 hours need to be broken up 11 different times, and it needs to be across 4 different channels, so email, text, YouTube, etc. And so I thought, I'm spending a lot of time manually giving the same pitch on these presentations. I wonder if I can do what my allergist did and record the presentation before somebody hops on the call with me. So I started doing that, and all of the people that came on, I was no longer hearing things like, who are you again? But I started hearing things like, dude, what you said in that video made so much sense. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Or I would hear things like, hey, what you were talking about with that client, that's exactly what we're going through. If you can help him, you can help me. And my favorite one that I heard was, hey, how do you know what I'm writing in my diary? So I created these strategies based on what I learned from my own paid advertising, right? Lead generation is simply not enough. What you need is these 5 keys in order to make it work. And the 5 keys are simple. First, you need a rich niche, which we'll get into here first. The second is you need an irresistible offer that can basically sell itself. Third, you need a leveraged sales process or sales presentation that can take somebody from being a completely cold stranger to wanting to crawl over each other to give you their credit card. Fourth, you need traffic. And then last, you need money math, because no matter how good your marketing is, good marketing cannot beat bad math. So with that being said, let's get into number 1. Rich niche. Now, when I first started in the tax planning industry, my second client, Ed Lloyd, he came to me and he said, hey, Daniel, I'm looking to go after dentists. Now, I've looked at this, right? Dentists are great, physicians are great. So I said, okay, awesome. Let's go after dentists. And we did. And in the beginning, it was absolutely amazing. We were getting booked appointments for like $60 a pop with dentists who were doing over 7 figures. But the problem is that after about 2 weeks, things started to dry up. We weren't getting as much appointments as we were before. And what I did not realize is this. You see, tax planning is unique because not everybody is a qualified customer. So if we look it up, okay, I'm going to look it up here. There are about 135,000 dental practices in the United States, okay? Based on data from, I think, the Small Business Administration, only 4% of businesses across the entire United States make over $1 million a year. Tax planning, obviously, you need to have some actual room in there to be able to implement your tax planning strategies, right? They need to have enough profit or they need to have a high enough AGI. So with that being said, we now need to take the 135,000 dental practices and we need to multiply that by 4%. So 135,000 times 0.4. So that gives us 5,400 people who qualify, okay? 5,400 people who are probably making over 7 figures a year as a dentist's office. Now, right here, this is called the buyer's pyramid. The buyer's pyramid states that at any given time, in any market, there's a certain percentage of buyers who are buying right now. Specifically, that number is about 3%. So if you look at the people who are looking to buy a car right now, there's about 3% of the United States who are looking at that, right? People who are looking at a new house, about 3%. Same concept. 3% of the entire market is looking at tax planning at any given time. Here's what we have to remember. It's not 3% of the 135,000 dental offices. It's the 3% of the 5,400 that qualify. So now that we have that number, we got to take 5,400 times 3%. Well, that only lands us on 162 people at any given time that are actually going to be in the market. And that does not mean that they're in the market for your services, right? They might be looking at a couple different tax planners. So what we found with Ed is we were burning through this 162 people so quickly, faster than it was actually replenishing. And that's why it started to burn out after 3 weeks. So I looked at this and I was like, okay, I've been taught my whole life, you need to pick a niche, right? You've probably heard this too. Hey, what's your niche? Who are you going to go after? And what I realized is that there's 2 types of niches. There's an industry niche. This is something like dentists, right? Or chiropractors or restaurants, okay? And then there's something called a problem niche. Now, a problem niche, this is interesting because whether they're a chiropractor or a dentist or a surgeon, okay, at some point they all have a similar problem with taxes. Instead of going after an industry, what we tested next is we started to go based on the problem that they had. For example, are you paying over this much in taxes and you haven't heard from your accountant, right? Or maybe you're coming in here and you have a tax preparer who only files once a year, but they've never mentioned any of these strategies to you. Instead of specifically going after an industry, we said, hey, let's pick people who are doing over $1 million a year in a service-based business, and these people are overpaying on taxes, or they're paying over a certain amount, because some people don't know if they're actually overpaying. And what we found was that shift made it so much easier. For Ed, I think we've been running the same ad for maybe like 6-7 months now. We haven't need to update it because people are constantly replenishing in this 3% of the market who is buying now. And again, because we're not limiting it just to this industry, but we're going after a problem, it's so much easier. And just one last thought on here, when you're going after the problem niche, it's always easier to go higher ticket because these people have a bigger problem than the people over here, okay? Small business, I highly recommend not going after those people. To be honest, right, if somebody's doing $100,000 in revenue and you're looking to pitch them a 10K tax plan, that's 10% of their entire sales. Somebody who's doing $1 million, that's only 1%, right? And somebody who's doing 10 million, right, that's 0.1%. This is crowded. Everybody's going after small business. Nobody's really targeting the people who are doing $10 million and up. So the best part about this is that it's uncontested, but they also have the biggest tax bills, right? They are the people that you can help the most, and they have the money to pay you. So that's the key number one. You need a rich niche. Now, once you have a rich niche, okay, you need an offer that can sell itself. This is the second step. And when I first started my marketing agency, I was selling marketing services like everyone else. If you look at the ads that you see right now in the market for tax planning, it's all that, hey, I'm gonna make you a tax plan. I'm gonna help you, create a customized plan based on your needs. But here's the thing, it's a red ocean. Everyone is selling tax planning, okay? Now, here's what we need to understand, right? When you are a commodity, commodities are a race to the bottom in terms of price. And if you cannot be the lowest price leader, there is absolutely no competitive advantage in being the second price leader. So what we need to do instead is we need to have a transformational offer. Now there's 3 criteria for a transformational offer, okay? The first thing is that it needs to have a quantifiable end result. QER for short. A quantifiable end result is simple. A tax plan is just a means to an end. It's a vehicle to get them to a destination. That destination is savings. It's slashing their tax bill. So the first thing we need to do is we need to quantify the end result. Hey, I'm going to save you 30% on your taxes. Hey, I'm going to save you $50,000 in taxes. Quantifiable end result. The second thing is that you need a unique mechanism. You need something that helps you differentiate from all the other tax planners out there. Because when they come to look at you, hey, everybody's saying that they're going to help me save on taxes, right? What is different about yours? And then the third piece is that you need social proof, okay? Nobody wants to be the first client, right? They want to see that you've helped people just like them achieve that quantifiable end result. And then the fourth one, this is just kind of a bonus. You don't need to do this. It's not required, but it's highly recommended. You need a risk reversal. Hey, if this doesn't work out, what are you going to do? So those are the 3 things that you need, right? Quantifiable end result, unique mechanism, what makes you different from the market, and some social proof, right? They want to see exactly people that you've helped just like them, okay? So we have a rich niche. We have offers that can basically sell themselves. Now, we need a 24/7 leveraged sales process. You know, Warren Buffett says that if you can't make money while you sleep, you'll never be wealthy. If you can't make money while you sleep, you'll never be wealthy. And like me in my business, right, the only time that I was able to book appointments starting out is when I was picking up the phone. But as soon as I figured out paid ads, as soon as I figured out how to craft offers that can sell themselves and how to differentiate myself from the market, I could wake up to a calendar full of booked appointments with my ideal clients, okay? So instead of doing all this manual labor, cold email, LinkedIn, posting content, what we use instead is we use leveraged media. An example of this is just like what I told you about with my allergist. He could have came in like every other doctor and given me the same exact spiel. But what he did instead is he did what's called canning it and cloning it. He took everything that I needed to know and he turned it into a video. And whether he was there, whether he was asleep, on vacation, whether he decides to go to Mars, this video can play 24/7, 365 without asking for a raise, okay, a coffee break or vacation. And the nice thing about the media is that your time is no longer limited, right? I can only personally take 5 sales calls a day. So I would prefer to take those 5 sales calls with people who are already, let's just use the Google example, who have already spent 7 hours consuming content of mine. So the more of this I can create to leverage, the less selling I have to do, and the more I can put it on the media, okay? The marketing now does the selling for me, so I don't have to focus on selling, and instead I can focus on closing the deals that come through and are at a 9 out of 10 on that sales scale, as opposed to coming in ice cold because they never watched any of this. So with this strategy, you're not limited to 5 sales calls a day, right? Where you have to kick through the tire or weed through the tire kickers. But in this scenario, you can have 1,000 people watch it, for example, and it doesn't take any more of your time. So that's our third key. The fourth key is traffic. Okay, so we have our rich niche, our irresistible offer that basically sells itself. We have our leveraged sales presentation. Now, all that is great, but if you don't have any eyeballs on that, it doesn't matter. So how do we get eyeballs, and the right eyeballs? Well, at the end of the day, there's 2 types of traffic. There's what we call intent-based traffic. Okay, this is where somebody's going out of their way in order to actually search something out. And then there's interruption-based traffic. These are things like mailers, TV commercials, you're scrolling through on Instagram and you get hit with an ad, right? Versus this is like Google. Now, I did a podcast interview with the Vice President of Engineered Tax Services, Heidi Henderson. And we were doing some research, and she had said, hey, you know, our Google traffic has really seemed to dry up. And I said, okay, well, let's take a look here. You sell cost segregations. Do you know how many people are looking for cost segregation across the entire United States? She said, you know, I should know that, but I don't. So I went up and I looked on what's called Google Keyword Research, which basically tells you the search volume for certain topics on Google. So I went and I looked, and across the entire United States on a given month, do you know how many people were searching for cost segregation study? Less than 300 people. Now here's what's crazy. You have to take the 300 people and you now have to divide that by all 50 states. So that gives you like what, 5 a state? And you also have to break that up based on city. Just because you bid on a keyword in California, right? They might be closest to, let's just say, San Jose, right? So the San Jose organic might come up on that, okay? But the other problem with this is that it's limited. There's only so many people searching at any given time. And so I told Heidi, I was like, Heidi, do you know how many people are searching for plumbers at the moment? She said, oh man, plumbers across the United States? I don't know. So we looked it up, just like we did the cost segregation study. 300 people a month are searching for cost segregation studies. Over 1 million people a month are searching for plumbers near me in the United States. And so intent-based traffic is great for what we call demand capture, okay? In other words, if the demand is already there, then that works perfectly, just like the plumbers, right? Nobody's gonna go to Google and search for a plumber near me if they don't have a problem with their bathroom. With cost segregation studies and tax planning specifically, they don't realize that they have a problem. So if they don't realize they have a problem, they're not going to go out of their way in order to then search that problem that they don't realize that they have. So that brings us to the second one, which is interruption-based advertising. And this one is called demand generation. And with demand generation, you basically have to create the need. You have to create the problem. And the nice thing with demand generation is that once you crack it, you don't have a ceiling, right? You are not limited just to the people who are searching, but you can scale this much further because basically everybody is targetable at this point. So with demand generation and interruption-based advertising, it really comes down to 3 things. First, you need to be able to capture their attention with a strong hook. The second thing is that you need to open up the pain. You need to show them that they have a problem. And then the final piece is that you need to show them a potential solution to it, which would be, your services. And then then drive them to a call to action, which is, viewing a video, a presentation, submitting a form, booking a call with you and your firm. So if you're a tax planner and you're trying to do this demand capture and you're not seeing any results, the reason is because tax planning is a demand generation type product. You need to go and generate the demand. You can't capture demand that is not there. So our last one is our money math. Okay, so just to recap, we got a rich niche, irresistible offer, we have our leverage sales presentation, and our final one is money math. And I live by the quote that a great offer, right, great marketing will never beat bad math. And if your agency is not tracking and they don't have KPIs, key performance indicators, and they can't tell you how much it costs to acquire a client, right, or how much things are costing, okay, and you're running paid advertising, then you need to fire them immediately, first off, okay? But the second thing is that if you can't measure it, right, if you can't track it, you can't improve it. So at the end of the day, there's ultimately two things here that comes down to the money math. It's our client acquisition cost, how much does it cost to acquire a customer, and what's the lifetime value. And there's one thing in particular that is one of the biggest needle movers, right, and that is your pricing. Okay, I've noticed after talking with hundreds of tax planners that most of the people who learn tax planning, what ends up happening is they get pitched on this idea that, hey, you have all these accounting clients, bookkeeping clients, right? And you can go in and you can sell them these $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 tax plans. And that's great. Right? It's a great cash infusion. And on top of that, the clients that you already have, it provides an additional service, an additional value driver for them as a client. All right? But here's the problem with that. When you're advertising tax planning, you're advertising it to somebody, A, who doesn't know, like, or trust you yet, which is why you need the leverage presentation to be able to build that trust outside of your time. But the second thing with it is that the pricing is typically not geared towards cold traffic. So I had a client, okay, his name's Mark, and he was pricing his tax plans at like $60,000, $70,000 on cold traffic who'd never heard of him. Now at this point, we didn't have any leverage sales presentations in place. They were really just, booking a call, hopping on the call, and he was trying to pitch him that. He maybe had 1 out of like 50 people take him up on the tax plan. And I asked him one day, I said, Mark, what's the average that somebody stays with you? And he said, well, the industry average is 7 years. I said, okay, 7 years. And when someone becomes a client, how much on average do they pay you per year? And he said about $15,000 a year. So I said, all right, let's multiply 7 years by 15,000. And that gives us a lifetime value of 105,000. Okay, so let's just put 105. Now, when he was pitching these $50,000 tax plans, the problem with it is that, sure, he was getting 1 out of 50 people to take him up on the 50K plan, but the other, let's say 30% who might have taken him up, he's missing out on this additional $105,000 in potential lifetime revenue because he priced himself out of the market. And so what I recommend people do, especially with the pricing here, is that they go in and they make it friendly enough so that somebody can, of course, give you that money, but you can now get the lifetime value of the next 7 years. So tax planning, like I said, when you're using it with existing clients is great because it's a cash infusion. However, when you're advertising it, it's great to get new customers who can then pay you over the next 7 years and build up your book of business. So let's just say that he went from selling $50,000 to a $10,000 tax plan instead. But instead of 1 out of 50, let's say that now he has 1 out of 10 people taking him up on that. Well, sure, he might be losing $40,000 up front, but ultimately, because he has 5 times more people taking him up on that, right, that $10K up front still adds up to $50,000, but now he has 5 times as much lifetime value than he did before. So when it comes to the front end, right, how do you price this, right, so that it's still profitable? Well, now we need to know our client acquisition cost. How much does it cost to acquire a customer? And my beliefs are a little bit backwards on this, right? Most people tell you, hey, you want to make money on your tax plans, which yes, is true. But if we can break even on acquiring that customer, okay? So in other words, let's say that Mark spends $10,000. That's how much goes out. And then the client pays him $10,000. Okay? Well, at this point, you'd say, I didn't make any money, right? No, you did not make any money right now. However, with that being said, you got a customer for free who's now going to pay you $105,000 over the next 7 years, okay? And maybe that's just the low end, right? $15K a year for the next 7 years. If you go higher, right, maybe a client's paying you $30,000 a year. Would you be okay with spending $10,000, making $10,000 back, breaking even on getting the client if you knew they were going to spend $30,000 a year over the next 7 years? Of course you would. So as long as we can break even at the very least on our client acquisition cost, knowing that over the next 7 years they're going to pay you a handsome 6 figures in revenue, which is where most of your profits are going to be made anyway, is on that back end, would you be comfortable breaking even on acquiring that customer? Yes, of course. So when it comes to paid ad, that's part of the money math that we need to look at, right? As long as we can break even on acquiring new clients, that will allow us to scale our firm by giving us all that back-end lifetime value. So just to recap everything we talked about at this point. First, you need a rich niche. Second, you need an irresistible offer that can sell itself. Third, you need a leveraged presentation, a leveraged sales process that is independent from you being involved, your time. Third, you need traffic. You need to be able to create that problem in the prospect's mind so they're then interested in what you have. And then last but not least is the money math, because again, great marketing cannot outmarket bad math. Look, if you're like, hey, Daniel, I need this. This is what I need help with. I want to be able to scale my firm. This is exactly what we help our clients implement from top to bottom. So if you're looking to scale your firm and you want help implementing these 5 keys, what I've done is I've set aside a few minutes on my calendar where we can chat and go over whether this would be a good fit for you or not. This is a very time-intensive offer on our side because it's almost 100% done for you. You do have to record some videos. With that being said, we can only take on about 5 clients per month. So if you're interested in having us help you implement these 5 steps, go below this video. There's an application where you can tell us a little bit about your firm. And after you fill out the application, if you qualify, it'll take you over to the next page where you can then book a call with my team. Like I said, this is not for everyone. If you're just learning how to do tax planning, this will not be applicable to you because we don't teach tax planning. If you already have some clients and at this point you've either tried paid ads and you haven't gotten them to work, or maybe you are running paid ads but you're like, hey, you know, I have this part but I'm missing all these others, and you just want to scale even further and faster with someone who's been there and done that before, then you can go below and apply to become a client. We'll let you know, by the way, if this is something that we can help with. We're not just going to hop on there with you and try and take your money, because we only want to work with win-win scenarios, right? If we can't help you, we're not going to put our time and resources in, because we have a guarantee on this. So if we can't help you, it doesn't make sense for us to take you on as a client. We really need to make sure that you're a good fit for us and that we're a good fit for you. So if we don't feel like we can help you, we're not gonna try and hard sell you into something that doesn't make sense. So again, hope this video training was helpful. My name is Daniel with Wealthy Clients. Go ahead and apply below, and we'll talk soon.